Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Martha Ponge, and I serve as the Director of Apprenticeship for the New York State Manufacturers Alliance Intermediary Apprenticeship Program. On behalf of myself, JFF Center for Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship, the Apprenticeship Programs at SUNY, and our presenter organizations, I want to welcome you to Don't Leave Talent on the Table, a discussion focused on strategies and best practices for diversifying your manufacturing workforce. Please join me in welcoming today's panelists. As we progress through this discussion, you'll learn more about each panelist, and I am sure, like myself, gain a tremendous respect for the work they do every day while learning more about the strategies that these individuals and their companies are successfully implementing to diversify their technical workforce and expand career pathways for individuals within those organizations. I will begin by asking questions of each of the panelists, but please feel free to put additional questions in the chat, and we'll address those specifically during our Q&A during the last 10 minutes. Please include your name, your organization, and your contact information, so if necessary, we can follow up with you after the presentation is over. So let me start by introducing my awesome panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Paul Myles. Paul is the Senior Manager for Government and Workforce Development and Training Programs at Magna International. Our second panelist is Mr. Nick D'Antonio. Nick is a community and technical college champion and a workforce development strategist at Lockheed Martin. And last but not least is my friend Ms. Beth Dawson, who is the Apprenticeship Program Manager at Manufacturing Works in Cleveland. And I want to start by thanking you all for being here. To start off, my thoughts were around that diversity has such different meanings for employers. It can mean underrepresented populations, people of color, women, veterans, youth, the formerly incarcerated, individuals with disabilities. My hope during this conversation is to bring to light what diversification means not only in manufacturing, but what it means at each of your companies and to you all in particular. And I'm going to start by asking Paul a question. So, Paul, we hear individuals talk about creating corporate cultures that reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion. And many people debate that in order for manufacturers to attract and retain underrepresented individuals, they must ensure that their culture is welcoming and inclusive. So as a global company, how are you engaging with employers to be part of that overall diversity and inclusion effort? Did this happen organically at your company? Did you create a plan? Who's on the team? Did you do something that was really innovative? I'd love to hear more about what's going on at Magna.
Excellent question. Our leadership is an outstanding group of men and women. And our chairman was always forward thinking what we did as a company. And that's what has helped Magna become 159,000 entrepreneurial minded employees. We're a global company. First, we're a Canadian company, and we are a mobility technology company to the automakers. We're the largest automotive parts manufacturer in North America by sales of original equipment and parts. Being a global company, you have many different people that you will be hiring, and those people are intertwined throughout the world where our locations are. But our founder and chair, our former chair, Frank Stronach, in 1985, he introduced the corporate charter, corporate constitution. I think it was 2009 or 2008, we introduced the operating principles. And these documents reflect what fair treatment would be for people that work at equity, profit sharing, job security, our stakeholders, what we would do as a company to make sure that we that we stayed in line and true to where we were going. And this is what is taught to our employees when they are first introduced to us, or when we introduce them to Magna. Part of the orientation is to understand the culture that they're coming into and that they're going to work with. And our recruitment piece, it's simple. We don't target anyone, but we want everyone. So we have mechanisms in place that allow us to tap into women, men, people of color, intellectual disabled, justice, returning citizen, justice included citizens, and refugees. So we look at everyone having a value to give when they come to Magna. And once they get with us, we can grow that individual with their help, of course, because they have to want to move forward, right? So we can help them grow into where they want to be within Magna. As I said, we're a global company. You could start in any part of the United States and end up overseas if that's where you want to work and constantly kind of move around. But in me finishing up this, one of the things that we have done, our efforts, we also have launched a couple of new programs at Magna. And we have the Women Exchange, which we rolled out in 2020. This allows women within the company and outside the company to be mentors to women who may be looking to get into manufacturing. So we want to tap into that great resource of untapped talent. And then we have the EDGE race, which is embracing diversity globally by empowering our employees. And we rolled this out in 2021. And then a couple weeks ago, we rolled out the LGBTQ plus 21, and we are soon to roll out next generation. Next generation is our next platform that we'll roll out. And these platforms drive the conversation regarding the many topics in D&I. So it's a platform where our employees can kind of talk and communicate with each other, and men are welcome to be on the Women Exchange and vice versa. So it opens up and broadens the minds of our employees. So this is what we're doing at Magna at this point.
That's awesome. I mean, the open lines of communication are the most important thing, giving people a platform to share and to really feel like they're part of the discussion. That's awesome, and I applaud that. So Beth, I'm going to move on to you. So why do you think it's important to diversify the manufacturing workforce in particular? What is that going to do to help manufacturing works, and what is it going to do to help your community in general?
Sure, thank you. Let me first start off by telling you that a little bit about Manufacturing Works. We're an intermediary, so we're an economic development organization, and our mission is to grow and strengthen manufacturing in Northeast Ohio. We are member driven. We represent about 300 manufacturing companies in Northeast Ohio. So that being said, what I know is that historically, manufacturing has been a white male dominated industry. And we've been experiencing a workforce shortage. We've known that this workforce shortage was coming, and then COVID made it like exacerbated, right? So quickly. And so all of our members' number one concern is finding talent. And when we have to consider who is our available workforce, a few months ago, I reached out and got some labor market information from our local workforce board, and we found out that about 60% of job seekers in our local county are people of color. So if our manufacturing organizations don't have a culture that is welcoming and inclusive, then not only are you going to not attract workers to come work for your organization, but even if you do, you certainly won't be able to retain those companies.
Wow. I think that's true all across the nation, that we are at a point where if we are going to be able to support our manufacturers and fill those open positions, we as a community have to look at perhaps populations that haven't been part of our job market in the past. And I agree. I'm an engineer by trade, and when I went to college, my engineering class was only about 10% female, and that number hasn't changed in a few years. So we have to do a really good job. We have to be intentional about the decisions we make in order to make these things happen. It really can't just happen organically. So Beth, you shared with me that according to, and I believe it was the Manufacturing Institute, that we could close the skills gap by 50% simply by bringing 10% more women into this industry. That's amazing.
Right?
What strategies, have employers put in place to accomplish this?
Yeah, so that's one of the strategies that we're looking at here in Northeast Ohio. In a few weeks, we're going to be hosting a panel discussion, which I'm a part of, in partnership with Women in Manufacturing Ohio. That's one way that we are trying to raise awareness and bring more women specifically into apprenticeship programs. Also, we're encouraging our organizations, our member organizations, to develop that culture that is inclusive and try to, one thing I have to say that Paul mentioned is that every single applicant is weighted equally, right? Every person is considered valuable to the organization. And I really think that that's the number one shift that has to happen in order for this to work. Because to Paul's point, they don't necessarily have to go out and look for any one particular organization.
Right.
Because they have welcomed all populations from the very beginning. So if we can encourage manufacturers to do that one small piece, I think it would make a difference. And then also, I think manufacturers need to promote and highlight their female employees on their social media. Certainly on their job advertisements, those need to be inclusive, show a little bit of diversity in that regard. And then lastly, I'd say returning veterans is a great population to grab, right? And there are lots of female veterans that would be looking for opportunities. And coming up in a couple weeks, we're going to be attending a job fair that is specifically targeted for veterans. And, to try to get them, the sooner the better, to get them really good opportunities. And we know that veterans often have some skills that easily translate into manufacturing jobs.
That's great. I have to share with you that one of the employers that is a member of our association employs a workforce that is primarily welders, and to date had never had a female welder that they could recruit and then retain. And they were really struggling with why this was happening. And one of the things that they talked about was that they never had a locker room that was specifically for females. And when they built their new plant, they didn't have any female welders, but that was one of the first things that they put into the plans, is to have a locker room. And that helped to generate that space where people felt like, oh, I'm welcome here. There's a special place for me. And I applauded when they did that. I thought it was just amazing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll share too. I was on a visiting a manufacturing organization. It was a small company. They don't have a female ladies room. They don't have a ladies room. So they're not looking to put a female restroom to their plant. So they're just going to deal with what they get. But that was mind blowing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Absolutely.
even have a female restroom.
So let's talk about your apprenticeship programs in particular. So Nick and Paul, you have well-established programs. Beth, yours is in its initial phases. And I'd love to ask a few questions about those current programs and your corporate and personal commitments to upskilling individuals from all communities. So I'm going to start with you again, Paul, and apprenticeships at Magna. How long has Magna been engaged with apprenticeship? How many employees participate, and what are the different trades? And I think what's really important is, what do those opportunities afford apprentices long-term at Magna? And I guess lastly is, how do your DEI efforts connect with the shop floor and the work you're doing with workforce development?
Excellent. Well, apprenticeship is our DNA, I'm sorry. Our founder, Frank Stronach, if it wasn't for his mom at age 14, taking him by the hand to a facility in Graz, Austria, a manufacturing facility, and saying, give my son a skill, I wouldn't probably be sitting in here talking to you right now. And 159,000 plus employees may not be working under the name of Magna. He's an extraordinary man, extraordinary thinking, but he had the skills that he developed through a trade. So you can be successful in the trade. So we need to remove that stigma that four-year college is the only pathway to become a millionaire or billionaire, right? I mean, with the skill levels that you have and your creativity, you have those tools in your toolbox, you can be successful. But we have many apprenticeships, from robotics technicians, maintenance, electrical, mechatronics technicians. We have tool and die maker, injection molding. We do, to make it simple, what Magna produces. We make everything but the rubber wheels.
Wow.
Those are the components of our capacity. Our capacity is so deep that we actually can, and we do, assemble full vehicles for our customers. So it may be one of our customers, but we will assemble the whole car for them, as well as make a lot of the components. So you need specialty people trained at special levels all the way through. And we kind of look at our employees from day one as an apprentice. You're kind of in a pre-apprenticeship. All your skill levels will lead you to the full-blown DOL apprenticeship, right? So we use the apprenticeship as part of the recruitment tool, because people want to go where they can see that there's going to be a growth opportunity. So having the apprenticeship goes back to, how do we attract people to us, women, men, minorities, and we give them that opportunity to be in the apprenticeship. But they're building those skills at the very beginning. We also, what we're rolling out right now is, our brand is our people that we have just hired. Because at some point, they're going to teach the people that are now coming into the door, and how you prepare them to teach the new person who maybe they've only been there 6 months. You're teaching them to teach the new person. And it's relatable to the new person, because the person who's been there 6 months say, well, I started just like you, and now I'm a team lead, or I'm a team trainer. And you have somebody that you can relate to as far as your growth. And then your succession plan is built at 90 days. So you know, at 90 days, we're going to have a meeting with you. We're going to say, you're doing great, Beth. You're doing a great job, Nick. And here's what we want to do. We want to put you in a couple of trainings, and then we want to grow you and lead you into an apprenticeship program in 1 year or 2 years. So now you are more opt to stay with us for retention reasons. And then we have a highly skilled person moving through our program. But we would not be the company we are without these skilled individuals who have went through a DOL apprenticeship. We have aggressive apprenticeships of 3 years to 4 years. And we've actually built technical training centers that just specialize in technical training within Magna. We use the German model of apprenticeship. Then it's validated of the person having the skills. It's not just the leaders that you work with signing off on it. So
Right.
it's a little bit different from American Apprenticeship, but you know, we work with another organization, NIMS, National Institute of Metal Worker Skills.
Yep.
They
Yep.
set standards, so we use them as a guideline as well.
I think that's amazing. You know, we have a lot of discussions with companies about attracting young people to apprenticeship. And one of the things, you know, that we talk about is apprenticeship is a way to tell an individual on day one that you believe they have value and you want to invest in them long term. And being able to share with the company that the return on investment for an apprentice, you know, just from a retention standpoint, the numbers reflect like close to 85% of apprentices are still with their organizations 5 years later. I mean, no one has that type of retention anymore, and I think it's pretty remarkable. So, Nick, I guess I have a little. Oh, go ahead, Paul. Oops, I think we're there. We go. We'll let Paul come back.
I'm breaking up on you. Pass on this one.
That's okay. You'll get back to us. So, Nick, I have a little different slant on apprenticeship that I would like to ask you about. If I can, I'd like to go back maybe to that original, how diversity and inclusion is defined by different organizations. So I currently work with the University of Rochester Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities, the Developmental Disabilities Policy Council of New York State, and a wonderful developmental disabilities subject matter expert from an organization called Factor. And we have a program that started this year in New York State called Project Search to Apprenticeship, which is a high school career exploration program to pre-apprenticeship program that works with young adults who identify with developmental disabilities. I think I heard that Lockheed has created a pathway into technical careers for individuals with disabilities. And I'm just wondering if you could share the details of that program and the impact that it's having on everyone at Lockheed.
Yeah, definitely, Martha. Thank you so much. And thank you to the JFF team for including Lockheed again to speak about apprenticeships and our workforce development solutions. So real quick, just background about sort of the Lockheed Martin intersection in this work. You know, we feel as if diversity and inclusion efforts sit at the foundation of our culture and reflect our core corporate values around doing what's right, respecting others, and performing with excellence. And we entered into the registered apprenticeship space several years ago, establishing corporate national standards, and have since registered over 40 occupations and have about 1,500 apprentices nationwide to date. The program that Martha alluded to comes from our Rotary and Mission Systems division out of Morristown, New Jersey, that established a relationship with Rowan University and their PATH program, supporting students who identify as being neurodiverse, and really providing a pathway for students who are in engineering-related programs to have a pathway into Lockheed Martin, and in this case, via an internship program. And really the opportunity for Lockheed, as is with most of our apprenticeship-type solutions, is to be able to provide opportunities for different sources of talent to come in and experience the Lockheed Martin culture and be able to expose Lockheed Martin leaders and hiring managers to what different talent sources can bring to the corporation. And I would say that that's true across really all of our work-based learning programs, is that as we establish new apprenticeship solutions or new apprenticeship programs or work-based learning programs, what it really allows us to do is to attract talent that is interested in particular types of fields and be able to lower the prerequisite requirements or expectations that we have for individuals, to open up to a larger aperture of individuals to come into those types of roles and then grow with Lockheed Martin. And in the case of the program that's been established with Rowan, where we've had deep relationships historically, we've really been able to tap into an entirely new student population at the university who may not previously have thought that they would be qualified for careers at Lockheed Martin. They've been able to come in, experience the company, experience the type of work that we do, the type of customers that we work with, and in those internship roles, while they're completing school, still receiving support services from the university. And for a number of those students, they've been able to convert into full or part-time roles with the corporation as well. So that relationship has not just been beneficial to students who came over to Lockheed Martin and for the company, but our ongoing relationship with Rowan University, who is a very meaningful partner in Southern New Jersey. That's been a great way for us to be able to grow that partnership and relationship as well. So that's just one example of many of our D&I efforts across the corporation from a talent pipeline perspective that really also help to drive our successes with apprenticeship and other work-based learning solutions.
I think, when you say lower expectations and grow the aperture, I think sometimes we think lowering expectations means lowering competency levels, and that's not at all what we're talking about. We're talking about maybe diversifying our own thought patterns to think about what other measurement tools do we have that show the value of an employee as they come through the door. And we have a wonderful partner down in the Hudson Valley at Fala Technologies, and he's done a tremendous job with growing opportunities for neurodiverse individuals. And I always like to tell the story about one of the tool makers that just graduated from his program, actually has a 4-year degree in electrical engineering and had graduated from a 4-year organization with a very high grade point average. And after 2 years had still not secured permanent employment. And really it had to do with his ability to build a relationship with those recruiting individuals, those talent acquisition people, and really get past the interview process, which is sometimes difficult for any of us. And I will tell you that he started working on the floor as an apprentice and has grown so significantly in 4 years that he's graduated from the apprenticeship program and is working his way up through the management pipeline at Fala Technologies. And I just think that it's remarkable to hear, but it shouldn't be a story that we tell that's out of the ordinary, because I think there are so many individuals like this that can use our help. And I think that's great. So thank you for sharing that with us, Nick. Beth, you're in the throes of starting a brand new program. Your pre-apprenticeship program is scheduled to launch this spring in 2022. How about talking about some of the challenges of working with individuals who may not have any manufacturing experience, or perhaps maybe have education and income barriers that make it challenging for them to present as qualified candidates? Those individuals who economically can't take the risk of just changing jobs or industry sectors. Maybe talk to what are some of those skill set barriers, what are the personal barriers maybe that you look at? Do you work with both of those? How does that work?
You just got me frazzled because, as you mentioned, this is just a pilot that's kicking off. We haven't even received the funding yet.
We have all the faith in you, Beth.
However, I mean, these are things that we are absolutely prepared to work with. Manufacturing Works has been offering workforce programs for many years. We've had a youth pre-apprenticeship program in the high school, in a high school in Cleveland. So we're very well aware of the skill set barriers as well as the personal barriers that our participants will experience. I think as we're approaching this now, one of the things that we're facing is, unlike everyone else, of course, is, are we going to be able to recruit participants? There's everyone fighting for talent right now. So we want to get really creative in looking for talent in places that people don't necessarily look, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the people with disabilities, that's a huge untapped resource. LGBT, we are very lucky to be connected with workforce development agencies in the greater Cleveland area that serve job seekers and special populations. So if we're lucky enough to attract applicants, we have to screen those applicants and make sure that those folks are going to be successful in our program. So the first thing we're going to be doing is assessing their literacy and numeracy skills. And, I have to give credit to Martha here. When we were starting this thought about creating a pre-apprenticeship program, one of my colleagues who is a wise guru in apprenticeship and watching this presentation right now, was kind enough to connect me with Martha and MACNY. And we talked through just how important it is to identify the right people to be successful.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest takeaways, Martha, from that was, in the city of Cleveland, our graduates of Cleveland Public Schools are not necessarily at grade level in literacy and numeracy skills. We know that. And we learned from you that folks that you're working with in the Syracuse area, it's pretty similar challenges. And so we are going to make sure that they have the literacy and numeracy skills. But I think what was most important to me that I took away from you was that if there's an individuals that do not have the literacy and numeracy skills, to keep those people engaged and very carefully hand that person off to a community partner. In Cleveland here, it's an organization called Seeds of Literacy that can provide tutoring to be able to help that individual get up to the grade level that they need to be successful, and then welcome them, encourage them to come back for the next round. That's very critical. And then, of course, personal barriers. In one regard, I think people who are facing financial challenges, they can be looked at as, gosh, those folks have a lot of barriers to success, and that could be really challenging. But I choose to look at it as people who live in poverty are really problem solvers. And more than likely, somebody who's living in poverty has solved 5 to 10 problems before they even report to work. So, looking at them as an asset for that exact reason. But then there's going to be those very practical barriers that we need to be prepared to deal with. Childcare, transportation, sometimes it's food. We learned about a manufacturing company that to address the issue of hunger, just on the shop floor, put out a bowl of bananas or granola bars, so that if somebody's hungry, it doesn't necessarily have to go to your low wage workers. It's anyone on the shop floor that's hungry can go and grab a quick banana or a quick granola bar. People are going to perform better if they're not hungry, right? So there's some pretty simple things that you can do. And then, your more complex issues like childcare, that is, having a career coach as a part of this program is going to be essential, and having enough funding available for supportive services in the event that something larger happens, right? That maybe the WIOA funding doesn't cover. Martha, you shared with me a story about a pre-apprentice who got bed bugs, and he worked for was working with a food manufacturer, and he couldn't go back to work while he had bed bugs in his home. And the company was requiring that those bed bugs had to be removed by a professional company. And this pre-apprentice went and explained his situation, was honest to both his training provider as well as his employer. And MACNY, that Martha's organization, was smart enough that they had some funding. They were able to jump into that. The gentleman had to move. So while he was in the process of moving, his employer put him into a janitorial responsibility so he could still stay employed. Then Martha was able to give him first month's rent and security deposit. He was able to move. And without that type of support, that individual would have definitely lost his job. And it's a lose-lose at that point, right? So we have to get really innovative in how we look to support people. And Manufacturing Works and MACNY being the intermediary, a nonprofit, we're able to apply for resources that can help employers eliminate those barriers, and we take on some of that responsibility. I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'm going to pause.
Well, I can't believe you remember that story, because it makes me cry every time I think about it. But it
Probably
makes,
why I remember.
oh, but it really brings to light that, the partnerships within your community, whether it's a school or a community-based organization, an education provider, whatever it is, working together is what helps to bring solutions really to the forefront. And Nick, this is a great way for me to, start talking to you about, community colleges in general, community-based organizations in general, generally have greater access. Sometimes we call it like the church basement community, where grandmothers are around and they're saying, how do I get my grandchild a great job? How are you going to help them get to work? Or at our community colleges, where people are in the rooms where they're doing studying and tutoring and things like that, and people talk about these, but they have greater access. So how have you utilized those community groups in those colleges to help you grow your programming, and how have those collaborations really helped you?
Yeah, Martha, and I've spoken to Lockheed Martin's commitment and investment in community and technical colleges on other JFF panels before, because it's becoming a primary focus of our recruiting and talent pipeline efforts, in addition to how we think about upskilling our incumbent workforce as well. And to your point, community colleges recruit probably the most diverse population amongst higher education institutions, not just in terms of race or ethnicity, but also in terms of age. And part of our focus now has become on how do we tap into community and technical colleges to support really occupations across all different skill levels. And I think part of what I would say is that we have begun to look at community colleges from a relationships, not recruiting perspective, and we started to preach this mantra of relationships over recruiting. And what that's allowed us to do is to develop pretty unique pipelines into Lockheed Martin, whether that would be through pre-apprenticeship or pre-employment programs that help to skill folks up in the Lockheed Martin way before they come in the door and sort of guarantee employment if for completion of those programs, all the way to thinking about what we need to change internally at Lockheed Martin to be more receptive to the talent that's coming out of community colleges. And I think we're speaking to one example, and it goes back a little bit to what Beth just spoke to. Lockheed Martin a couple of years ago launched a corporate signature scholarship program. We call it the Lockheed Martin Vocational Scholarship, supporting students who are pursuing an associate's degree, short-term certificate, or industry certification. And feedback that we were getting from our partner colleges was that the students who are applying for the scholarships, tuition is not always the challenge that they're facing. Tuition can be offset to other sources. They get support from the college in different ways to support that particular cost. But from an educational attainment perspective, the challenge was focused more around transportation or childcare or books and supplies. So in the last couple of years, we've made revisions to our corporate scholarship on the two-year side to allow for the funds for the scholarship recipients to be used for those other types of expenses that might be incurred by students, to be able to complete their education. And we've been able to leverage that scholarship program and the students who can come in under it as one of those primary pipeline sources. I will also say, though, just more broadly, it's all well and good to talk about partnering with community colleges and targeting those students, but you also have to make sure that your internal processes and procedures allow for those students to actually have a successful opportunity to be employed and be considered for opportunities. And right now, we're going through a fairly significant effort to think about, for certain types of positions and roles, what are our academic prerequisite requirements. And when I talked about expectations earlier, that's kind of what I mean. Are we asking for the right type of background, the right type of education for the types of roles that we're hiring for? And are we creating the types of opportunities that allow different types of students to come in and be qualified and be able to compete for those roles? And that's something that Lockheed as a corporation has to reflect and change internally before we can step out and say that we're actually going to do efforts to tap into those pipelines in a deliberate and meaningful manner. So a lot of this effort in being able to work with two-year institutions and look at this population as well that we want to tap into and ultimately work with more frequently has led us to an internal process of improvement to make sure that we're creating an environment where those individuals can be most successful. And frankly, across all of our facilities in the U.S., community and technical colleges are proving to be staple partners that we want every LM facility to have a relationship with. So that's become a very strong focus and will be continued into 2022 as well.
I love that you said building relationships as opposed to recruiting, because I think that that's one of the things that is most important, especially to young people and job changers who are going to be moving into the manufacturing sector, is they want to know that there's a place for them. And, you know, it's about fit. It's not necessarily all about qualifications. You can have the person who's eminently qualified and really isn't a fit for your company and they don't last. But someone who has a basic skill set that and the desire to grow and expand those skills to be able to move up within your organization, I think that speaks volumes to who you are as an organization and how that works. And Paul, I'm gonna put you on the spot for just a second, because I think that, well, if I can get Paul's, oh, maybe I can't. Paul shared with us that he came into Magna as an apprentice. And I think that that also shows that when you have an organization who believes in the people that they are hiring and believes that their employees are the most valuable asset that they have, that you can develop a pathway to bring in an individual with a very limited skill set and provide them with the on-the-job training and the related technical instruction that allows them to not only do the job that they are doing today, but to expand their skill sets to the jobs that they want to do tomorrow. And oh, I think we have Paul back. And so maybe Paul will elaborate a little bit on growing from being an apprentice to growing to be the head of, you know, workforce development for an organization the size of Magna. Amazing.
Better talk quick because this buffering will probably come back soon. But no, you know, life as an apprentice, it's changed my life. The people that you get to meet and work with, you work with different ages and different cultures of people. You'll find that a person from Germany has been trained one way, a person in the US has been trained another way. And as an apprentice, you have to merge those two styles together as you go through your career and develop to become a journey person. You know, one of the unique things at Magna, I've had the pleasure of building a technical training center in Baltimore, Maryland, and I built them within the United States, but the one in Baltimore, Maryland was in a poor community. Our founder came in there and he wanted to make a change. We have a social responsibility as a company. And so we took people that were incarcerated, people who hadn't graduated high school, women who just was curious to what manufacturing was because it just wasn't introduced to them, right? And we developed an apprenticeship program. We paid them for 3 years just to come to school, not to make a product to sell, but to learn and earn credentials that would change their lives for the rest of their lives. We had a GED program in there. We had a job readiness program. So there's different tracks that individual, once you step into the Magna Baltimore Technical Training Center, you weren't going to leave without getting a positive guidance or being into one of the programs. You didn't leave that building without earning something or gaining something that would help you with your career. Our most unique one is in Missouri, and we have kids, as far as the recruitment, we touch kids at a very early age in the elementary schools and the junior high schools, because when they get into the high school, they already kind of have the decision of where they may want to go in their careers. But when you introduce to them earlier, and not just on manufacturing day, we roll in there several times during the year, and then we have open house where they can come in. So we're introducing them, then we're fostering the future. We're showing them what they may need to learn or what courses they may want to take that aligns with what we're doing. But we have them intrigued from the very beginning, and then they want to get into manufacturing. That's men, women, and minorities all alike, right? But their homeroom is actually at our facility. So they're learning PLC and controls. And then we also have a intellectuals with disabilities also homeroom in our facility. So they're not only learning their regular classroom, checking, banking, history, but they're also learning manufacturing. And we've hired people from both of these different training facets that we have to full-time employment. I don't forget the one time I was visiting and we were out on the floor, I was taking a tour, and there was a young lady crying. I didn't know it was a girl who was operating the robot's mother. And I says, everything all right? She says, yes, that's just my daughter. And I don't have to worry about, who's going to take care of her if something happens to me. She continues to grow within our company. We have female apprentices who's getting ready to get her DOL certification. So we're excited about that. And Magna, we use that to connect other women into the advanced manufacturing arena. Because, back in old days, you can't do that. But you never know. Women have a lot of skills and very creative to where they are much better than men in tool and die maker. I found they hold the tolerances better. But within Magna, we've created those opportunities where we're training people and we're introducing schools into our facilities where they have homerooms. And then going back to what Nick had mentioned, community college, that's our great partnership. I mean, we partner with them in collaboration because there's new technologies that are being developed every day. So who else is going to help them fund the new technologies or even introduce the technologies that are needed for the future, right? So those collaborations are very important. And then you have your collaboration of workforce around you. I'm going to go to Beth with something she had mentioned about those supportive employment needs. We actually had a bus route rerouted that not only helped Magna, but helped other manufacturers in that industrial complex, because it was like a mile for people to walk to work, especially in the wintertime, right, to get to their job. So we worked with our governmental agencies and the bus agency, and we got to reroute it to now they have a path. So people are showing up on time. People are coming to work because now they have another avenue to get to that last mile that will help them feed their family. And again, Beth, you pointed out on the nose, putting out food, fruit to support. It's non-biased. It's there for everyone, and it makes a difference. And one of the things about workforce agencies I found, because I work with many of them throughout the United States, there are support services that are there that will merge with and collaborate with businesses to help remove those barriers. They don't want to come to work and say, well, I'm getting kicked out of my apartment or my car doesn't work. I mean, there's a lot of pride in all of us. It just comes with us when we brought into this world. But when you have another third party associate who's kind of neutral or who is neutral, and they can go and talk to this person, it helps them remove that barrier and helps them be successful. And it builds that retention loyalty of the company because you have this resource within your facility for them to go to, right? So
that's amazing. That is just amazing. We are very fortunate here in Central New York to work with an organization called the ABCs of STEM, and it is a K through 2 programming for introducing families to careers in manufacturing. And my favorite is we have a picture up on our website of a second grader wearing her father's welding equipment to school. And the number of parents who called in and said, how do I get a job like that? It provided that family engagement and made people recognize that these careers are so valuable. So it's so exciting to hear that you're doing that. I promised that I would do a few questions from our audience. And so one of the questions that was asked were, do any of the participating programs panelists do you have workplace English programs or pre-apprenticeship programs for speakers of other languages? How do you deal with that within your organization? So whoever needs to answer that or can answer that.
I'll start off. I was running a manufacturing facility for Magna. And as I said, we're a global company. So we have those, the charter, the corporate constitution, operating principles in many different languages. But we had a Chaldean population. And so we had to make sure that our process sheets were written in another language. But we took another step because they wanted to be diverse as well. So we brought in, after work, we had an English teacher come in, and they would sit down as a class and teach English as a second language.
Wow.
So we have used that in different areas throughout the United States to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to continue to grow without any barriers with the language.
That's awesome. Nick or Beth?
So for us, we don't have English as a second language built into the pre-apprenticeship, but I can tell you that we do have service providers in the community that we can, just like if we need to do pass them off to somebody off to Seeds of Literacy for help, we have the same thing for ESL folks. But I should mention that we also, because we are a network of manufacturing organizations, there's one of our companies, National Safety Apparel, they pride themselves that they have, their workforce speaks 20 different languages, 20 different languages. And then Odie is another company, they're in competition, right? And right now, Odie's got 100% of their apprentices are underrepresented, and they also have 100% retention. So, you know, if we can't help someone put somebody on a path to apprenticeship, we can certainly help them get employed, which could then lead to apprenticeship.
That's great. And I think it speaks to where you are, the regions that you live in. You need to do different things to adjust to the populations that you have in place. Nick, this might be a good one for you too, because we've been asked a question about industry recognized credentials and stackable credentials, especially those that run through community colleges and technical high schools. In your experience, are there specific certifications that really lead to great job placements?
Well, Martha, I'll say that's probably highly dependent on the particular opening or requisition in the role. I will say that as a corporation, we have begun to increase the internal knowledge amongst our talent acquisition colleagues and our hiring managers on the value of industry certifications and credentials as it relates to both supporting our pipeline and identifying talent, in addition to how we upskill or reskill workforce within the corporation as well. I think that one of the best exercises that we've been running with teams that are interested in deepening engagements with community colleges or workforce nonprofits that might not be a standard or traditional provider of post-secondary education is walking them through mapping exercises where they review their own job descriptions and then look at the credentials or the certificates that are being offered on a short-term basis by local providers so that they can see how strong the alignment is. And you will, and I will say, when you start to work with local leaders, you get some wide eyes open to see how close some of these shorter-term programs are to meeting the needs that they're expecting for individuals coming into the program, and then additionally helping them to understand that these shorter-term programs are more accessible by the candidates that they might be looking to pursue. So I would say that I can't speak to specific certifications. I think for different programs, we see different pieces of value. I know NIMS was mentioned earlier. We look at the American Welding Society credentials as well. The MSSC Certified Production Technician that's been used in a number of pre-apprenticeship programs that we have. And then even as we think about some of the more emerging technologies, we see a lot more certification utilization in terms of what gets spoken to in job descriptions. But I would say that's an evolution additionally, but the familiarity and the awareness of our hiring managers has increased substantially in recent years, and we're starting to look for those shorter term credentials more and more as we put out new requisitions for certain roles.
I know, for us, we have relied on Tooling U for a lot of our online programming. One, because it can be read to you. So, Beth, when we're dealing with individuals who need to go through a literacy program before they're going to be able to go, this is a way for them to start their training concurrently and have it read to them. It also comes in multiple languages. We've also worked with their new Certified Manufacturing Associate program, which is, I think, just like one step lower than MSSC. So it's a way to bring in individuals who have absolutely no experience in manufacturing and really give them a great baseline to grow from, and to give them a feeling of confidence that they have the skill sets necessary to be able to move that forward. So, I think there are so many valuable things out there, but I think each of you has shown that you have different populations of people that you're working with. You have, different levels of competencies that are required for the jobs that you have posted at different times. But it all comes back to the value in the employees and how are you going to upskill them so that they can remain as, the critical part of your workforce that they are, and how can you engage those in your community to join in and be part of that as well. I think that, we have gotten to a point where I am going to have to turn it over to Mark Genua from the Center for Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship, but I do want to say thank you so much to all of you. And not only, I think, for just, sharing about how you individually are diversifying your workforce, but showing individuals that are here listening and participating that there's a community of people supporting the endeavors that you all do, and that we're not in this alone. We're all in this together, and the more that we talk about things, the better that, our growth and our expansion of these valuable programs is going to continue. So again, I thank you all so much for joining us today. And I will now pass to Mark Genua.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Martha, for moderating that great panel session. And thank you, Paul, Beth, and Nick for participating and sharing some very valuable information you have about your company and organization. So in these last 3 minutes, I just wanted to briefly wrap up of what we heard, and through that I wanted, since we only have a limited amount of time, through 3 key things that I heard from each of our panelists. First, from Paul, his great quote of "every person is valuable to the organization," and that could be definitely exemplified in Magna's open lines of communication and really investing in their training through their apprenticeship program and other means. Also, Nick, had a great line, said relationships over recruiting, and just how valuable those partnerships are, with your community-based organizations, your workforce boards, your community colleges, as well as with your workers directly. To have that relationship is very important. And then, Beth kind of summed it up. The simple things matter. Her story about, just providing those food on the shop floor. Everything doesn't have to be a complicated issue. Some things, just the simple things matter, and they can be solved through that. So again, thank you. And all the stuff shared today and more, JFF takes pride in advancing this work throughout the field of apprenticeship and other work-based learning programs. So if you're listening and you're interested in hearing more about some of the strategies you heard today and others to really advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workforce, in your apprenticeship programs, in whatever work-based learning or other workforce strategies you're doing, please feel free to reach out to us. There'll be a card at the end after I present with the website to how to get connected to us. So please go to the website, fill it out, and get connected through one of us at JFF, and we can help you along this process. We run many projects at our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, including our IDM project, as well as our newly launched D&I Center of Excellence, where we're going to be providing these types of strategies all throughout apprenticeships in every industry. So again, I thank you for your time in attending. I appreciate everyone's time. Appreciate the panelists and moderators' time. And until next time, we'll see you. Thank you.
Thank you.